Dan. This is the
There you
inside
go.
joke. Okay, never mind.
Welcome back to Kingdom Cast. This your host, Good Luck Chuck. We back at it. Actually, you can call me Super Champ Chuck now. I forgot I changed my name again.
Oh,
Don't, so yeah,
oh, wow.
don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share all your social media platforms. It is officially draft season. I know a special guest on here right now. It's earlier for him. You know, he's got to tap into film like pretty much every week. But before we get into all that, man, let's go ahead and introduce the panel here. My guy Country's on the middle of the screen, the top. My guy Boogie's on the top right. My homegirl Kylie's on the bottom left. And we welcome back the film guy, co-host of RGR Football with Ryan Tracy. Bring back my guy Daniel Harms. How you doing,
How's
man?
everybody doing, man? I love being back. I'm always coming here. Always love talking draft, and I love what you guys do out here. So I always appreciate it.
So
One of
listen,
our
Appreciate too, man.
early guests. Dan was on the
Yeah,
show before it was cool.
Yeah, I'm always,
big
always
facts.
the
Do it.
OG, the
The
exactly.
Big facts.
OG.
So yeah,
Speaking of this,
what's up, Nani? So yeah, let's go on and get to some things, man. We had some breaking news a few days ago with Nate Taylor in regards to the Chiefs and their pursuit or not pursuing DeAndre Hopkins. They could be in the running for Odell still, even though Odell is still coming with ridiculous price tags and whatnot. And we got some other stuff going along with that. So to me, the way I'm seeing it right now, I mean, I already knew the Chiefs were going to look at receiver again in this draft class, but I think it's a little more certain at this point. Now, if Odell come down on his price tag a little bit, then yeah, I mean the option's still there. But I mean, what you guys think about the news in regards to them just being out on D Hop first, essentially?
hey man, I came to the conclusion last week. I don't want nothing to do with the Arizona Cardinal organization. Because when they was trying to get rid of Patrick Peterson, and we was calling and calling and calling, and they held on, and then he got old, and they shipped him to Minnesota. Like I'm just through with the Arizona Cardinals organization. You're not getting a second round pick. You're definitely not getting a second and a third. I don't know what Brandon Cooks ruined the market for y'all. Y'all should have moved him early and took care of it, but you didn't. So now the price has changed. And I'm not going over a third. I don't even want to give you a third. I want to give you a fourth and call it a day because I still got to worry about his contract at the same time. So I just don't want to deal with Arizona Cardinals their entire organization. They suck.
I agree.
I was a little. I still think it's early. It's still early. I mean, right now they saying the Chiefs is out because the price is probably too high right now. But I still think once the draft comes around, we'll start seeing them conversations heat back up. Because every team that they saying was interested in them, you got Baltimore. I think it was maybe
Patriots.
Broncos, Patriots. So it's still teams, and no, they shopping around for the deal they can get. Whenever they get the best deal, they go move them. And if the Chiefs up their deal or if other things change, it can still happen. So I'm cool with it now, but I still want D Hop. I don't know what country you're talking about. I still want D Hop. I still want that contract. I still want him 2 years. I still think he's the best receiver, better than any receiver we can get in the draft or any receiver we can get this year. Period. So I still would want him, but it kind of suck right now.
Dan, what do you have on it?
Oh man, I just don't. I'm more with country with. I don't want to give anything up for like over a day three pick. Like I'm not about that life. The Chiefs need to get younger everywhere, and they still continuously value those youth top 100 picks. So I'm just kind of like in the middle, and I know that the reports came out that OBJ wants 15 million. He didn't get 15 million. Like he's not going to get 15 million. Like you haven't played since the Super Bowl, and you want that much. I get it. Right now you're ring chasing basically. You are shopping yourself around. You were at meetings this week. Like you're shopping around for a deal, man. You're not going to get 15. So I'm still trying to get Odell if you can because he's not going to cost as much in terms of draft capital and then the contract. So that's my own thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like on the whole, like if we can get OBJ, then let's get him, because I do think we need that vet presence on the field or in the wide receiver room. I'm kind of annoyed with you guys though, because I think in the beginning I was against D-Hop, and then y'all talked me into him, and like now we're not even gonna get him. So I'm like, I'm having a little bit of like emotional roller coaster happening right now, but it's okay. I accepted it about midway last week. I feel like we all knew this was dragging on too long. So we'll see what happens. There's still a lot of time left, like Boogie said, but it is what it is.
You talking about you? They talk. Jason Dunn said spent a whole hour talking me into DeAndre Hopkins. I think okay. Let's go realistic. I think we're gonna have to wait till June 1st when his cap hit is like 11 million instead of 22 million or something like that. So, can you be patient enough to wait till June 1st? I know Boogie can. I'm talking to the rest of y'all.
I know I can, man. Like I've said this for the longest with this offseason. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You know, it's like cooking something in the crock pot. You know, you gotta slow cook these things.
You gotta simmer that thing.
So Chuck, what you think about Odell though, Chuck?
Listen, I mean, I'm all aboard getting Odell at the right price. That's with me. Like if you can get it down to maybe like 10 million, maybe.
Everybody's cool
with some
with 10
incentives.
million for Odell.
I'm thinking like 6 with incentives. We can get up to 10 million. Max me up to 10 million, but if 15, it ain't happening, bro. It ain't happening.
No.
If this was New York Giants, Odell.
For OBJ, I'm thinking like 6 to 8. He's been injured. We don't know what he's going to bring. Like, I get it. You're coming off a Super Bowl, but again, like that was a year ago, I guess. Like, no one really knows what he's going to do. I don't know. He's kind of a diva. I don't like watch us sign him tomorrow, and he comes back. He's like, "You said I was a diva." Like, but I mean, I don't know. Yeah, like 8. I think it was like 8. 10 seems steep. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I mean, 6 to 8. I mean, that's not bad. I mean, at the end of the day, if we could get him for like a bargain, you know what I'm saying? Even if it's not 10 million, if it's a little less than that, that's even a bigger plus. But you know, we just see, man. Like I'm waiting for this stuff to play out. I just know one thing. I know we're gonna add another receiver through the draft. And speaking of that, let's get into it. Let's get into it. I don't want to talk about wide receivers first. So I think we all in agreement that JSN or Jordan Addison, they're gonna be gone by the time the Chiefs select, right? We all in agreement on that.
Yep.
All right. So the next guy in line, this is a guy that you just did film on not too long ago, Dan. Zay Flowers from Boston College. I know you've been kind of big on him. Matt Lane from KC Sports Network, shout out to him. He's been big on him. I've been seeing him tweet about him quite often. And a few other folks at Chiefs Kingdom been big fans of Zay. Now, the way you described him was kind of like Tyreek Hill without the 4.2 speed. That's what I kind of got from your film breakdown. But I've seen enough of the kid, and the kid, he's definitely a hell of a ball player. He runs routes pretty well. He knows how to separate and, like you mentioned, manipulate defenses and all that. But you did mention, like, he does have the yips at times with drops, kind of like how Tyreek did. He rounds his routes at times, kind of like how Tyreek did. So that's what I got out of it from you, man. So you mentioned that the Chiefs might be in a spot to maybe trade up for him. So, like, in the 20s, if that's a guy that's Brett Veach is really looking at, that could be a spot for him. Like, would you even consider trading up for Zay, or are you just like, you can get somebody else later on in the draft?
So I've come to the conclusion that, I'm like halfway in on trading up for receiver, because if you think about the top 4 receivers, depending on how you view the receiver market, because I have my own top 4. It's different from the consensus. I have Josh Downs in my top 4 because I think he's just a baller. I love that dude so much. But if you separate the top 4 from everybody else in the draft and you say these are the guys we think on our draft board can come in and make an immediate impact, regardless of being in Kansas City, because we know that typically doesn't happen very often. Then you say, all right, we know that the rest of the draft has developmental guys, has scheme-specific guys, more wide receiver 2-3 guys. That's how I view the draft. So you say, I'm going to go get this guy that I believe will be a playmaker out of this draft, one of the only ones that is in it. From that viewpoint, it makes a lot of sense. From everything else, I'm more lenient to want to go deeper in the draft and get one of these guys on day 2 personally. But again, I'm okay trading up relatively high, 20, 25-ish area. I think the Giants will probably be taking a guy like Zay Flowers. He was just mocked to them by Jaden Reed. Considering the guys that they have a ton of slot receivers now. It would make sense for them to keep trying to add and throw bodies at wide receiver to get Daniel Jones, who they just overpaid to be their quarterback for the next 3 years, to get him more weapons. So I think you might have to get in front of the Giants to get a guy like Zay Flowers. But he does the biggest thing, again, the manipulation. You don't have to be the best athlete in the world. You don't have to be the best ball winner. You don't have to catch the ball very well. You can get open. In the NFL, you can make it on any team. And that's the difference and separates him from a lot of these guys, is that no matter where he lands, he's going to be able to manipulate corners because of the way he runs and the way he gets in those blind spots of corners and the way that he can just always turn them whenever they feel they're in good position. He makes that and uses that against them. So I like Zay Flowers. Personally, again, trading up is still an maybe no kind of thing for me, but I definitely understand separating these top 4 guys and going to get one of them.
So what about because I'm definitely in the camp of I don't want a wide receiver in the first round, not because of the position, but I think edge might be even with the losses that we taken, I think edge still might be the bigger priority to me.
Yeah.
What about in the second, third, fourth round? Is there some guys that may not get the shine or the name or the spotlight on them, but they still are capable of coming in this offense and being a player?
Oh, there's lots of guys that can do that for you. Like my big guy, like I just talked about, Downs, but you'd have to get him at 31. I don't think he'll be there around when the Chiefs are picking in the 60s. But there's one guy who's probably going to be a mid-day 2 pick, probably going in the 3rd round. Jaden Reed, who's a 5'11", 180 plus pounds. He runs a lot of the same type of route tree that I think that I saw from Zay Flowers. He's a bit bigger. He also has immediate return impact on special teams, but he's got that manipulation to him as well. He might not be the fastest downfield guy. You don't need the fastest downfield guy. You've got MVS running wind sprints on the other side of the field anyway. He doesn't have to do all that for him. He just has to be able to get open and manipulate guys. And again, I come back to this because in a draft class like this, I think it's important to separate guys that have the ability to get open just about anywhere, whatever spot they're put in. He's got experience on the outside, in the slot, at the Z, so he can play all those different positions already in Kansas City, and we know that Andy Reid values that. So he's a guy I've had my eye on since the Senior Bowl. He was routing up everybody one-on-one. He was literally open almost every single play. I loved watching that, and again, he can also go get the football, has sound hands, and the catch to attack from him is really sound. He catches the ball and knows where the space is in the defense to attack it. So the acceleration, the hands, and the manipulation factor, again, for me, Jaden Reed's there. There's going to be some other guys later as well. Jonathan Mingo is a bigger 6'2", 220-pound receiver out of Ole Miss. The question with Mingo is that a lot like Jalen Hyatt and these offenses that run really schemed and gimmicky offenses that are just half-field reads where the receivers don't have a huge route tree and they don't really learn to play receiver. And that's the big question with guys out of Tennessee, even with Cedric Tillman to an extent. What's their route tree going to be like in the NFL? Quentin Johnston, their route tree is extremely diminished. So you have a really great athlete, a big athlete in Jonathan Mingo, who's really explosive after the catch as well. What's he going to look like in the NFL? So you get someone like that in Kansas City who has, probably not the extent of a route tree, like Tyreek Hill, for example, was a running back coming out of college. They were able to get him developed into a route tree. You see that as well a little bit in Kansas City. Some of their guys don't necessarily come in and know how to run that route tree, but I think they do a good job of developing that. The problem for me is some of these guys just don't have more upside to take that route tree other places, but I think Mingo has a ton of that upside as well. So those are two guys that I think you can get probably in the 3rd round. Mingo might trend upwards towards the beginning of that third round. But those are two guys I like on the second round on day 2 that can be really impactful in this offense.
Dan, I like Josh also. He seems like we would utilize him a lot in the slot. Do you see, if we was to draft him, do you see that stunt Scott Moore's growth, how we utilize him?
Yeah, so I think one of the bigger things about this slot only players in the NFL is today's NFL, there aren't really only slot players anymore. Like you're not going to get a ton of physical press man coverage on the outside. Teams play 60-65% zone, okay? You might get a press look on the outside, but if you can't get touched, what's that going to matter? And Josh Downs, from a short area quickness standpoint, hand usage within his route stem, and for those of you that don't know, the route stem is that first 5 yards where they're setting up their route, that vertical stem. That's why they call it the stem. It's that first part of the flower. That first part. How do you set yourself up? How do you deal with coverage, and how do you deal with physicality within that stem? You can't touch Josh Downs. His hips are so fluid. His ankles are so good. His handwork is great that it's hard to get hands on him. But you can also play him in the slot. You can play him with the Z, where he has natural separation, and you can get him into those routes early. So if you really wanted to in Kansas City, for example, you have Marquez, who we know is not going to create separation. Just have him run at the X, which they did a lot last year. Just run down the field, get the middle of the field open for everybody else. You could even have Kadarius Toney do that too from the Z, which they did a lot, and they had him run just up the sideline, and they would throw some back shoulder throws to him, some jump balls to him. But you can open up the middle of the field for a guy like Josh Downs. They do it for Travis Kelce, for Sky Moore, to be able to do all that stuff. So you can really play these smaller guys in the NFL on the outside more frequently because of how they've adapted in playing wide receiver at the college level. There's so much more. 7-on-7 has really exploded how wide receivers have developed, not just in Pee Wee, but high school and in college. They come into college really knowing how to separate, how to create separation, and how to be able to keep corners off of them in that press coverage. So Downs, from a physical standpoint, isn't imposing. He plays so much bigger than he is because of the way he attacks the ball, the way he can get off of press even from the outside receiver position, and then he's just physical. He's a physical dude, and I love that about him.
So Dan, say that we stay as we are currently constructed. So Tony, MVS, Sky, who am I missing? What's the other wide receiver we have?
I mean, you're not missing anybody.
Justin Watson, maybe.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so just
you got some practice squad guys, but I mean,
I'm sorry, the Ross brothers.
Yeah, the Rosses.
Okay, say we stay as we are currently constructed. What do you feel like is the need to add to that wide receiver group with what we already have? What specific talent do they need to fill in to what we already have?
For me,
I don't know if I worded that right, but
no, I understand what you're trying to say. What complements the rest of the wide receiver group?
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm a big aesthetic guy when it comes to receiver rooms, and it's because of Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson ruined wide receiver for me. So I came into doing all this. I'm like, I want me a 6'5" guy that can move, that can run away from everybody. That's not really the NFL anymore. That's just not going to happen. These unicorns don't come around. So I see Jonathan Mingo, and I'm like, this guy's 6'2". He's 220 pounds. He's fast. He's explosive. I like that kind of thing. But I think what you're looking for is playmakers. You don't need to have a size type. You don't need to have a big guy. You don't have to go for a short, shifty guy that can only play because he can't play anywhere else, because he can't play on the outside, because he can't get off a press, because he can't separate down the field. You just need guys that can get open. And I think that's why Sky Moore was drafted last year, because I think he was the heir apparent to Juju Smith-Schuster. Look what Juju got. And the Chiefs were like, we're not going to pay you because we have Sky Moore, who we believe can take over for your role. So they do a lot of role players. They brought the entire tight end room back. They have a bunch of tight ends. They're probably going to even draft another one. The Chiefs are shifting, in my opinion, and I've talked about this all offseason, to more of a positionless weapon offense. They don't care. They want talent, okay? Whether it's tight end, whether it's wide receiver, whether it's running backs, if they can find ways to utilize you and get you in matchup problems, they can bring a smaller guy, like, say, a Tyler Scott out of Cincinnati, really fast guy down the field. He's got some change of direction as well. So Trey Palmer out of Nebraska. These are smaller, shiftier guys with a ton of yak ability. If they can match them up in the slot on a linebacker or in a reduced split on a linebacker or even out wide against someone who's a bit bigger, clunkier in the way they move. And I'm not trying to pick on him, but Travarius Ward, for an example. You get one of these smaller guys on Travarius Ward, he's going to get him out around of him unless he gets hands on him, which typically doesn't happen. So that feel of cornerback, it's all about matchup problems. So you get talented receivers, doesn't matter. I think Marvin Mims is also an option, a deep threat, but Josh Downs type of player and things like that. You can find ways to get the matchups you're looking for that complement the offense. As we saw last year, Andy Reid doesn't need to have playmakers everywhere. They managed the best offense in the NFL with just finding ways to exploit matchups, and they did that well in the Super Bowl. So just all it is for them, it's just about playmakers and how they can fit into what Andy wants to do, and they can usually do it with anybody.
Yeah.
So
we move on
you
to
brought
this
up
my fault.
real quick. Sorry.
Go ahead, Kyle. My fault.
Like the Chiefs are moving into like a positionless offense. Do you feel like you could see them drafting a tight end? I've seen a few people say it, but I'm on Twitter, wherever here and there, talk about it. But do you feel like that's something that you could see them going after early on? Knowing that Kelce is aging, knowing that there is that, not that he's any less of a guy than he was, but you know what I mean?
I think if somebody fell into their lap, they'd be hard pressed to not draft them. But I think with 4 tight ends in the room, bringing back Blake Bell, that says, all right, we either have our eyes on a day 3 guy or we're really comfortable with where we are at tight end. But Jody Fortson's got a one year deal, and Blake Bell has a 1 year deal. So that at least tells me that they will be eyeing tight end, whether it's going to be on day 2 or day 3. I tend to lean towards day 3. You got Zach Kuntz out of Old Dominion. There's a guy, Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. These are going to be guys that are later day 3 guys. Dennis Allen out of Clemson, I believe. So there's a lot of talent at the tight end pool here. So I think that they're going to be drafting one. I'm just not sure where. I would imagine probably round 4. They have a couple picks there that I think they could get a weapon, an athlete that they're going to look to bring into that room.
Yeah, what Kyle's saying is big facts on the tight end classes in the future. But I want to talk about, before we move on to a different position or whatever, I want to talk about this kid Trey Palmer out in Nebraska. That's a guy that I've been kind of eyeing, like maybe he might be there, maybe in the 3rd round, if he doesn't get picked up late in the 2nd round. If I'm not mistaken, he was the fastest receiver in the combine. Correct me if I'm wrong, or he could have been one of the fastest. I like his vertical. Yeah, but I like his vertical speed. I like his ability to, get over the top. He can run the deep overs. He can flatten routes. But my thing is this: how do you see him fitting in this offense? Just in general.
Well, I mean, I think I painted a good picture of how just about any receiver you can fit into. But I think Trey Palmer, when it comes to the nuances of the wide receiver position, much like Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland, these guys they're about 6 foot, 6'1". I think both of them are on the 6 foot. They're under 200 pounds. And for Trey Palmer, he's at that 192 mark. So he's still in really good BMI, really good size in terms of what you're looking for at that wide receiver position. But ran a 4.33 at the combine, and that's deep speed. It's real speed. But again, that's, for me, he does not do well with contact. And it's not just at the press point; it's through the route. And when you don't have the nuances of playing wide receiver, like when you watch Zay Flowers and when you watch Josh Downs and when you watch some of these top guys like Jordan Addison that can manipulate corners, they don't need guys to give them cushion because they can beat them with manipulation and how they move their hips, how they move their shoulders, how they position their head. All of that stuff matters. And I don't think Trey Palmer right now has all that. So that's why he's not going on day 1 or 2. So it's all about how you can take a guy on day 3, which the Chiefs have not really been able to do outside of Tyreek Hill, and develop him to be able to do that. If you're just drafting him to throw into your offense and use the way he is, he's going to come in, be a slot and gadget player immediately, and then you kind of hope. I think year 1, that's what you'll see. And then the decision maker for me on a guy like Trey Palmer would be year 2. What's he doing on year 2? How is he moving? Is he using any of this nuanced talk that we're talking about? And can he manipulate corners? And can he get open? And can he run a route tree? So they can make anything work. And I think Trey Palmer is a nice throw on day 3 to come in and say, well, you have talent, and we have other guys in our offense that actually they already know how to run the route tree and how to run in this offense. But we'll come in, we'll bring you in, we'll throw you some screens, kind of run the McCole Hardman role. And that is a role in this offense that can really be utilized for guys like Trey Palmer with that 4.3 speed. So I'm definitely on board with bringing in some of these guys to run a McCole Hardman role. I don't expect Trey Palmer to develop past that, in my opinion.
Before we get off the receivers, Jalen Hyatt, a lot of people compare him to Deshaun Jackson. Andy Reid drafted Deshaun Jackson. What do you think about that?
I don't see it.
Another deep threat. We have had a deep threat. I mean, we have MVS. Is he too similar to MVS? What do you think about him?
All right, so I'll be as nice as I can, because I've talked about Jalen Hyatt quite a bit, and I usually get a little over the top with it. So Jalen Hyatt is an extremely good. He's a really fast, bursty receiver that can get behind the defense, and he has good ball tracking and good ball skills down the field. That's pretty much where it ends. He can't. My big problem with him at Tennessee was they threw Cedric Tillman, who's a 6'3", not as fast athlete, ton of quick screens, a ton of them, and a ton of wide receiver screens. And they didn't want to do that with Jalen Hyatt. That bothers me. Like a guy who's basically a slot and is a really, really fast guy, they didn't want to throw him. They didn't want to get him in space. That tells me he doesn't have the change of direction, which I can tell you he doesn't. He doesn't run quick routes. He can't get in and out of his breaks quickly enough to make guys miss in space. He also goes down on first contact far more than I'd like to see. So for a guy who is being, likened to Deshaun Jackson, he also only ran a 4.4. That's still fast. It's still really, really fast. But the acceleration I don't see from Jalen Hyatt to compare to a guy like Deshaun Jackson, because while Deshaun Jackson didn't have like a 4.2 Tyreek Hill speed, he was on these guys like a blink. He was gone, and I don't see that from Jalen Hyatt. So the build, he's not like build up speed. It's more like in between that acceleration 0 to 60 before you can really think about it. He's in between that and build up speed. So I like him from a deep threat perspective, but I can't draft him in the first round. He's not a complete receiver. And I think that the questions coming from that Tennessee offense, where it is just a ton of stack formation split out wide, and he's in the slot with 10 yards of separation on him and the big plays. Like if you go watch the Alabama game, this is why everyone's like, Jalen Hyatt had such a great Alabama game. Alabama did not, for whatever it is, did not respect his speed. They didn't respect it. They kept bringing safeties down. They kept bringing all these guys up to, not like up to the line of scrimmage, but they were bringing both their safeties down. Every time that happened, they just sent Jalen Hyatt on a go route and said, just go run by him, because they don't care that you're there. And they give him 10, 15 yards of separation at the line. So I don't know. It's a lot of gimmicky stuff they did at Tennessee. And the fact that they didn't use him in some of these, just give him a jet sweep, just give him some wide receiver screens, let him do some stuff after the catch because he's so fast, that bothers me.
Last thing on the wide receivers. I'm sorry, Dan.
You're good. This is my jam.
Are the days of
I got one myself.
And how Andy Reid drafts, are the days of a Macklin type, a Deshaun Jackson type, a Todd Pinkston type, a Freddie Mitchell, are those days dead? And he's just really, like you said, he's just going after pure talent at this point, or does he still kind of have like a mold or certain things he wants to fit? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, McCole Hardman was that. That's what I think he compares a little bit more towards what Deshaun Jackson did. Deshaun Jackson was bigger, obviously, and had better ball skills downfield, but they're pretty relatively close in what they did and what they offered. Probably more in the later career for Deshaun Jackson, because in the middle he was different. He was just a different player. When he was at his peak, he was something different, and he had that ankle flexion. He could just work guys one way and then break out the other way. McCole never got to that point, but I still think that he's going to see that type of slender speed guy that he will still want to use. I mean, MVS is essentially that. That's what he is in this offense. He's tall, he's lanky, he does not attack the ball well in the air, which bothers the crap out of me for a guy who's 6'4".
Right. Golly. I hate that.
So yeah,
I hate
it's
that.
definitely still well and alive in this offense. And I think if they find someone that has that on top of being able to move a little bit, wiggle in the hips and that ankle flexion to be able to get down low and sink your hips, I think they'll definitely be going after him. If not this year, after MVS is not in Kansas City anymore.
Okay, well, I got one more guy before we move on. This guy Rasheed Rice. He played with Shane
Yeah.
Buechele at SMU for a bit. He came in for a visit with the Chiefs. So I mean, what do you think of this guy?
Rasheed Rice is a frustrating watch because you can see that he's got talent and he just couldn't put it together. Again, SMU is another high-powered passing offense where they don't really ask their receivers to run a full route tree. So that's frustrating. You have a lot of curls, a lot of slants, a lot of goes, not a lot much else from Rasheed Rice, but you can see the potential. There was a play here, I don't even remember who it was, but I saw him catch a wide receiver screen, and he spun out of 3 separate tackles, and I'm just like, that's what I want to see from him. He's got some athletic juice to him. He had an up and down Senior Bowl. Again, he is going to be a little bit older. He's I think he's 22 years old coming into the draft, so he's got less time to really develop his tools in Kansas City in terms of what people will see as a bust. But that kind of comes along with Sky Moore as well, who played in Western Michigan, didn't run a ton of different routes. And I think that we could see with him, he's got a lot of useful tools. His combine was much better than I expected, and I've also heard that he was playing through injury this last year, which would make sense considering how well he tested. I didn't see that explosiveness. It was really inconsistent in his game, but there's a lot of yak potential there. He is a very willing blocker. Andy Reid loves himself some wide receivers that can block and want to block, and that's just something that he just can't say no to. So he does make those spectacular catches. They are littered all over his tape. Every game he's got one of those. Why can't you do this more? Why don't they throw the ball to you more in these situations? Like, you see one-on-one coverage, give him a chance. Why not? He can go get it. He's got really nice vertical ability with the ball. He attacks it in the air. You don't see him drop a ton of those balls. He does have some random, like, what the hell, dude? The hit you in the hands. Like, it's frustrating. Actually, he's a frustrating watch because there's talent there. There's vertical speed. There's moments of him getting out of his stance, exploding off the ball. And then there's some where he's just like waltzing out there. So I can't tell if the offense is limiting his overall ability or if it's just kind of in a headspace thing for him. But getting in Kansas City with a championship mentality can change some of the mental aspects from a lot of these younger receivers that don't really know how to win. So I like the fit because, again, you can play him at the X, at the Z, at the slot, and he can do all of those, fill all those roles. Route tree needs some expansion, and he needs to really buy into what he's doing and what the coaches are selling to get the most out of him.
Okay.
Let's move on to the next position. Where we going now? We're going. Yes. Let's go to the edge.
All right.
Let's get to the edge.
It's three. It's like 4 guys, Dan.
Yeah.
The Will McDonald, Felix, BJ, and the other dude. I cannot pronounce his name. I'm not going to even try.
The dude out of Northwestern.
The double A kid.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna even try.
He's the double A Energizer Bunny. That's what we gonna call him.
We call him the what? The Energizer Bunny?
Yeah, the double A Energizer Bunny batteries, man.
Oh, okay, the double. Yeah, okay, because it's double A.
Yeah, double A Energizer batteries.
BJ did horrible at his pro day yesterday. Does that eliminate him out of that group? Or are you still out of those 4? Are those the top guys or are those fits?
Well, Will McDonald and BJ Ojolari are not Kansas City fits. They're just not. So if I'll say this. Last year, after the Super Bowl win, Chris Jones singled out Joe Cullen in how he got better and how the defensive line got better. If they want to lean into more of letting him have a little bit of personnel control, that would bring a Will McDonald or a BJ Ojolari into the picture because he drafted Josh Allen in Jacksonville. So there is that type of body type. The problem is that I don't think Steve Spagnuolo is going to relinquish any of that. He sees like Tyree Wilson. He sees guys like Keon White, like my guy Derek Hall, and he's like, give me some of those big body dudes. Like that's what I want. I want long. I want powerful. I want some guys that can do that. Zach Harrison comes to mind too, who I can't stand, by the way. But that's neither here nor there. But Will McDonald, an extremely versatile pass rusher. You can line them up all over the offensive line, defensive line, and just say go after the quarterback, because like a lot of these guys, they don't get proper utilization in college. He needed to be off the edge, rushing the passer consistently, but much like a lot of defenses, like, hey, you're athletic, you're fast, go in coverage. No, stop doing this. Let these guys develop. What they're going to be on Sundays. We all watched the Eagles this year. Hassan Reddick was terrorizing everybody. Let Will McDonald, let PJ Ojolari just rush the passer. They can figure it out from a run defense standpoint. PJ Ojolari cannot stop the run, by the way. He's so awful. He has no functional strength to be able to hold up against tackles. So again, that probably takes him off the Chiefs board. Will McDonald also cannot stop the run. Physical strength, all these things don't have a lot of transition to what the Chiefs want at their defensive end. So those two guys, at least the way that they have drafted defensive end consistently over the course of Steve Spagnuolo's reign as the defensive coordinator, that they don't fit. So I don't mean to rain on all y'all's parade with these guys. That's just what I see.
Oh, you good, man. You good.
I like Felix anyway.
Yeah, I got a question that you mentioned about Joe Cohen and Steve Spagnuolo. Like, how much pull does Joe Cohen have in the defensive room as far as like making like defensive line personnel decisions, or is this still all Spags with that?
We're gonna find out in this draft. We're gonna find out, even if it's not on day one. If they don't draft a smaller, bendier speed guy on day one, watch day 3. They have picks. They have tons of picks. Usually, we see the Joshua Kandos as the developmental edge guys. Okay. If they go into day 3, and I haven't done a ton of extensive review on the guys on day 3 that are small and fast. Okay, so we'll get there when we get there. I got the big names up in my feed right now. That's pretty much what I got day 1 and 2. But if they do end up taking some of these guys that are speed guys off the edge that have that ability to just kind of bend and get around the corner, that's how we're going to see. Because maybe they're giving him a little bit of leeway with the developmental guys. That's where it starts, I think. I don't know if they're ready to just let him go off and just draft whoever he wants, but they might. They might. I would personally, because I think what he did with the defensive end group, with the defensive tackles, Mike Dana had his best season as an NFL player this year. I think that he has earned enough pull with the defensive staff, with Andy Reid, to say, I'm going to be coaching the defensive line. I'm going to be doing everything essentially. Give me a little pull. So we'll see. This is going to be a draft that kind of sets up how they end up drafting defensive ends, and I really think they need more. I think y'all know I've a pound on the table for speed guys off the edge since the very first year Steve Spagnuolo came to Kansas City. So I'm very hopeful.
Yeah, let's talk about the local kid, Felix Uzoma. Okay, so how do you see his fit here in this defensive scheme?
Wait a minute, say his name again.
Felix Uzoma.
Yeah, I think that's
I'm
about
gonna have
right.
to learn that
Woo!
one.
Okay.
I know, I was just shocked myself.
We all just
That
call
boy
him
got
Felix out here.
skills. I never say that.
Felix the
All
cat.
right.
We'll just call him that. Felix the cat.
This is
I just got
one of
George
my guys.
down. I know I ain't getting that.
This is actually one of my guys now. Like I watched his tape earlier from this season, and I was like, okay, I get the length there. I don't necessarily see the size, but he measured, he tested well in those regards. And then I went back to 2021, and I was like, this guy's different. This is a much different player than this last year. Apparently, he's also playing through injury almost all of 2022, which impacted his explosion, impacted a little bit of his power, his speed to power specifically, because when you don't have that get off, like I'm pretty sure he was dealing with a lower body injury. And when you have those lower body injuries and you're a guy who is kind of a tweener, but also has that raw power from your get off and your long arm, he's got that length to him as well. You don't have all that when you have a lower body injury. So it takes a little bit away from your ability to collapse a pocket. So you're constantly trying to beat guys off the edge with your burst and then your bend. And he's not the bendiest guy in the world. He's a good athlete, but he has the ability to sidestep inside. We talk about counters for defensive ends a lot. Counters are basically what you do to set up a tackle. So say you're a fast guy off the edge and you want to set your tackle up to beat him inside. You're going to go around, get him to set really deep in his stance. And then you're going to hit him with a get off with a first step speed, and then you just kind of use your feet and your ankles to tiptoe back inside. When you create that gigantic B gap on the inside of the tackle, you can beat him across his face. That's basically what he likes to do a lot. He wants to get these guys sitting out and setting in and use that long arm to get them out into their stance and then beat them across their face with some speed. He's got that to his game. I like to see that from him. The strength, the power is all there. Again, that length is very specific for Kansas City at defensive end, and Felix has all those tools, and I still think he has, with his frame, ability to put on more weight and get into that 265, 270 range where he can still have that explosion. But we all know that Steve Spagnuolo loves to have his guys around 265, 270 pounds. But we also saw Frank Clark be the most impactful he was in his entire career in Kansas City at 255. So what do I know? I don't know. I'm just here. I'm just the messenger. So I like Felix quite a bit, and he absolutely fits in this defense. There we go. Mama called Felix.
So you may have already said this, but I'm getting storms here and I keep freezing. So if I freeze up, that's why. But did you already talk about Myles Murphy?
I did not talk about Myles Murphy yet.
Will you talk about Myles Murphy? Because he's someone that I'm kind of high on.
Yeah, I like Myles Murphy, and I think he might be one of the odd guys out, at least in the top 2 or 3. I think he's probably the third defensive end on a lot of guys' boards, but is he going to be a top 10 pick? I'm not sure. I don't think he'll be a top 10 pick. And when you have Will Anderson, and there's more talks about Jalen Carter sliding because of whatever's going off on the field there, you might see a ton of corners and quarterbacks. There might be 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10 this year. So I still think Myles Murphy ends up as a top 15 pick. But if he starts sliding out there, then you really start to think about trading up for this guy, because he's an extremely high effort player. We know that's like Steve Spagnuolo's calling card, his love language. He loves high effort guys that have the pad level. He has the athletic ability. I think he's a better athlete than a lot of people do based off of his tape, but that's kind of more of a preference thing. And if he doesn't have that bend, like that elite bend all the time. Like you go back to 2021 and you could see a couple of instances of him just kind of bending the edge with his size. Didn't see a whole lot of that this last year, but I don't have all of Clemson defense tape. And that's one of the bigger problems with right now, is trying to be a complete film analyst and not have all the tape accessible. NCAA, I'm looking at you. Figure it out. But he does like to guess, especially in the run game. He's like, I'm just going to go into this gap, and then he gets washed out. Like that's something we see Chris Jones used to do in his earlier career. He would guess and try to jump behind the offensive line, make a play in the backfield. Sometimes you just get washed out. So I do like what Myles Murphy brings. He can rush from a 2, a 3, and a 4-point stance. He has a multiple array of pass rush packages. His plan isn't all the way there yet, but he has the spin, a slap, rip, long arm, push, pull. He disengages well. Again, that effort is just off the charts. And I like that he adjusts his game as it goes along. So he uses a pass rush move for a little while to set up. We talked a little bit about those counters, to set up a tackle, and then he will change his game as a tackle adjusts to keep them on their edge. So I liked to see that from him. Again, he's one of my top 2. He's my number 2 defensive end in this class. So I'm pretty high on him. I don't think he'll be in the Chiefs' range, but again, you never really know what happens in a draft. So you see teams start reaching for tackles, start reaching for maybe wide receivers and quarterbacks and corners. He could end up falling.
Yeah.
What do you think about? Hold on, Chuck.
My bad,
Nolan Smith. I liked what I heard from him. What do you think about him?
Again, he's in that same mold with Will McDonald and the other smaller guys, but I personally think he's going to be a top 15 pick. I think he's also going to be a top 15. He probably jumped Myles Murphy. That was the other guy that I couldn't think of for the life of me that may jump Myles Murphy and continue to bring him down. And that's why, That's why you never really know. Like these guys, Nolan Smith is probably going to remind a lot of people of Hassan Reddick, and people are going to see like, look what the Eagles did with Hassan Reddick, and they're going to use him in that way. He's so raw as a player, but he's so strong for a smaller guy. He's a really good run defender, and you don't see a lot of guys his size that have that ability to stay with their hips down and engaged a tackle and actually set an edge. You don't see it very often. So teams are going to watch that. They're going to see his testing, and they're going to be like, we can make this work. So whether it's top 15, top 12, I think he's going to go that high, and that will also push Myles Murphy down. So again, it's such a fun thing to think about, and that athletic ability. I mean, he ran faster than the defensive ends and the running backs. Like he was just flying out there. So he's explosive, he's quick, he's bendy, and he's strong. Teams are going to love that.
Do you enjoy draft season more than regular season?
I don't enjoy it more than regular season. Regular season is still my jam, but I love talking about film. Like this is what you guys can probably tell why I do what I do. Like this is so much fun just talking about guys.
I love that. You can tell you're really into it. I like that.
Yeah, did we tell myself? So like I want to talk about somebody that you did review not too long ago on RGR football, Derek Hall. Now, this was a guy that Willie Gay was pounding the table for on Instagram not too long ago. He was like, please, just begging Brett Veach to select him if he's available in the draft. I saw some good things on tape. Then, of course, you see some of the flaws with some of his pass rush moves and like his plan as far as like the pass rush goes. But the motor's there, the effort's there. He's got great closer speed and all that. And I think you mentioned he kind of has a similar body type to Frank Clark. I'm not saying not exactly, but, the measurements and all that stuff. So, like, overall, I mean, where do you see Derek Hall as a player if he does get selected here in Kansas City?
Derek Hall was my first draft crush of the season. Like, I watched him at Auburn. I was like, this dude looks like a Kansas City Chief. You see the length, the power. Excuse me. He's even got more get-off speed than George Karlaftis does. People think that Karlaftis had a good first step coming out. You guys probably know how I feel about that. But I'm happy he was able to be productive. He started to get it. And now we're seeing him work with Tamba Hali, getting his hands right. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I love. It's like, you got stuff you have to work on. Do it. You don't see a lot of guys just attack the things that they're not very good at, and I love to see that George is doing that. So you can, if you were to draft Derek Hall and put him next to him, you have two guys that can actually collapse a pocket. I just think that Derek Hall's more explosive of a player. He actually showed a little bit more bend, not a lot, because he's not a bendy dude. He's not one of those guys that are going to pull a ghost move in the middle of game. It's just not going to happen. Those are your 3-4 outside linebackers, or your Nolan Smiths. So you're not going to see that from him. But he even talked about during the Senior Bowl working on his inside counters. Another guy that is very self-aware, that knows what he has to work on. Going to be a little bit older, but unfortunately, Brett Veach apparently has a type in the first round. They don't like to draft guys that are older than 21. So I'm hoping that maybe they make an exception for Derek Hall, who is a senior. But at the same time, I don't think Derek Hall is going to be a first-round pick. I would personally feel more comfortable taking him at 31 than a lot of people do, because I'm very confident in his arms, his in terms of his pass rush moves. His long arm is more of a go-to. He really likes to go all in on the power game. Just got to get away from that a little bit. Use your first step. It's really explosive. He ran a 4.44 at the combine, and he had one of the most explosive 10-yard splits of all the defensive ends. That's there. It shows up on tape, and I don't understand why people were saying they couldn't see the first step with it. I'm like, it's right there, and now he puts it on the combine to show you that he's explosive. So, guy who can set the edge, guesses a little bit too at times. He can get a little too high with his shoulder pads, which lets tackles into his chest a little bit. But he's talked about working on those inside counters. So I'm a big fan of his. But again, it's probably going to be more of a trade up in the second round for this kind of guy. I don't think he's going to be a first round pick, even though personally I would.
There's a kid, and I did take notes. I just want y'all to know that, but I don't have it. I think his name is Dexter something. He might be out of Florida. He's like a defensive tackle guy.
Yep.
What's his name?
Gervin Dexter.
Gervin Dexter.
How you feel about that kid?
Oh man,
I love the kid. I love that kid.
he's so frustrating. He's
Is that
so
good or bad?
frustrating, man.
I don't.
It's the thing. I want you to do this more often because he's so inconsistent. He's routinely the last guy off the ball, even though he's an explosive athlete. Routinely, he just kind of lazily gets through his pass rush plan. He's got a lot of power, and you can see him take on double teams at times and not get moved. You also see him get absolutely washed back behind the linebackers at times. You see him just blow by some of these guards and centers with his speed and quickness, his short area ability, and then you see him just kind of put his chest into him and just kind of like do this. And he's just so inconsistent, but when he puts it together, he's the most talented. I won't say he's the most because Jalen Carter is in this draft, but he might be the second most talented defensive tackle in the entire class from what he does when he puts it all together. It's just so inconsistent that he does not have that killer mentality that it looks like. So that does bother me to an extent. And when you don't have that as defensive tackle who is more athletic than 90% of the offensive linemen you're going to go against and you should dominate, it tends to impact me in that way. So he ended up being my defensive tackle 5 before my grades are all finalized. But again, the athletic ability, when he locks out his arms, they're not going anywhere. Like it's over. He just completely can dominate from a physical standpoint, from an athletic and a speed standpoint, that he just needs to put it together. So if you think he's in Kansas City, they have a perfect defensive tackle. I don't know if you guys know Chris Jones to really help him learn the ropes of how to use that length and that athletic build. So he was visiting Kansas City as a top 30 visit, if I'm not mistaken. So the talent is there. It's all about getting it out of him. And I think, again, we talked about championship room and having that championship mentality. If he were to be drafted in Kansas City, it's a good place to learn about that and to watch the guys that have done it and to let him get some of that experience.
Is it play to play, or is it level of competition, or is it game to game, or is just always inconsistent?
Every game I watched, he just pops in and out of being dominant. You have like 3 or 4, maybe 5 snaps a game where he just dominates guys, and then he just kind of, I don't know, disappears.
Yeah, maybe I was.
They asked about the kid from Western Kentucky.
I'll be very honest with you. I don't have any Western Kentucky film. I have none.
Well, maybe I was gassed up about the Dexter Combine. Maybe that's why I got a little excited, because I feel like if he does become a Chief, let's say the Chiefs do take a chance on him, I feel like with Joe Cohen's coaching, Chris Jones' presence, like you mentioned, I feel like he can get rid of some of those inconsistencies that he kind of had in college. That's how I feel about it, just based on his natural ability.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Kansas City would do too. They would be like, yeah, this dude has a ton of talent. We can groom him. We can raise all that out of him. So yeah, I think that's the idea of taking some of these athletic upside guys. It doesn't always work out, but it's all about, for me, for those athletic guys, it's about the mentality. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. They would find out in the interviews. It's probably why they had him in Kansas City, honestly. They know he's athletic. They want to get interviews done to see how he answers questions, how he goes about his business, and how he can deal with some of that in the room. Kylie
is either frozen or asleep.
Oh, she's frozen.
No,
that's Storm Cutter. That's Storm Cutter.
I was in and out for a second, but I think the storm has finally passed. No, I was just listening.
Oh, okay, there she goes.
All right, cool.
I'm back. I'm here.
Dan, we kind of had that same knock on Chris Jones too early, that he would take plays off and he wasn't really practicing hard, or things like that. That further tells me that he can help this guy if he was in that same. Did you have those same concerns about Chris Jones?
I did. I wasn't doing this when Chris Jones was drafted, so unfortunately, I don't have that.
Okay. Yeah, it was rumors that he used to take plays off, and
Yeah, we heard that like 2 years ago in Kansas City too. So like,
I mean, we heard that this past season, like the ringless bandits that should not be named, was claiming they took off a bunch of plays. Right.
Ringless.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I got one more guy I want to talk about real quick. I'm gonna try to pronounce his name. Antoios Ataware.
That's the
Devo
kid I was
Warren.
talking about.
Yeah, out of Northwestern. Okay, so what do you think? What do you think about him?
He's kind of a tough eval. I don't have a ton of tape on him, but what I've seen, he's like a tweener. Okay, and when you have these guys that are defensive tackles or defensive ends, it's hard to know what they're going to be in the NFL. And I think specifically when you look at what he was able to do at the combine, I mean, this dude was unreal. I'm going to try and find his combine numbers here. There we go. This is like I for right now, I think I have him listed at a defensive tackle. But he's 6'2", 282 pounds. So you have that body type, and you're like, okay, you have the strength. We know that the strength is there, but you're at a place in Northwestern where you never really did anything. Like he didn't do a ton until he got to the Senior Bowl, and then people are like, hey, this guy's powerful. He's athletic. What's going on? And that raises some questions. It raises some questions about why. Maybe just because Northwestern's awful and you didn't like being there. I don't know. That happens to a lot of kids that come out. They don't necessarily have the drive in college. Like for me, I didn't have the drive playing football in high school because I knew I was going to the military. I didn't try as hard as I could have because I was like, okay, have checked out. I'm not going to be doing this in college, so why should I try hard? Sometimes I think that can negatively impact production on the field for some of these college guys who are like, am I going to get drafted? Am I going to get noticed because I'm playing at Northwestern? How many Northwestern defensive players do you know that make it in the NFL? I don't know. That's just more of a philosophical question that I ask myself when I'm going through this. And the athletic numbers, he rated as the best defensive end in the entire class. The entire one on just looking at his numbers here. So run a sub 4.5 40 at 282 pounds. What? That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
That's crazy.
So you
That's
have to
pretty
project.
Lord have mercy.
You have to project a lot with this guy. He has 33, nearly 34-inch arms. He can essentially play tackle if you wanted him to. 6'2", 282 pounds. He's that athletic, that long. So it's hard to find a spot for him. But I think next to Chris Jones is probably in Kansas City where he would slot. I don't see him as a defensive end. Again, that pass rush plan, the pass rush moves, I don't believe he has it now. That doesn't mean he can't develop it, but he's versatile. I know a couple guys in Kansas City that play defensive end that lined up at nose, at 3-tech, at 5-tech last year. And so the value in a player like that on day two makes a lot of sense in Kansas City because that positional versatility that Joe Cullen and Steve Spagnuolo like. So he's got all of that from a standpoint. He's extremely raw. So you're going to draft him, another senior local guy. You're hoping that these developmental traits can translate. And again, it's a room with Chris Jones, with Joe Cullen, with Steve Spagnuolo, with guys. They can all help him. So I think it's a good spot for him. It's just a jump to a guy who didn't flash until the Senior Bowl and then the Combine. So I remember a guy, an offensive player that, I saw dunking on guys at Baylor a few years ago, and he starts to show up at the Senior Bowl, and he's like, running good routes, and now look at him in New York in the Jets, and he can't get on the field. So sometimes when you see a guy at a Senior Bowl really blow up, it doesn't necessarily translate into the field. I think that, again, situation matters and having versatility matters, but I think I would project him as a defensive tackle at this point, not a defensive end.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it too.
Hey, so Dan, I want to ask you two questions. I think that we've been developing this kind of type of Brett Veach move. It seems like there's always a small school guy. There's always a Senior Bowl guy in every draft he's had since he's been there. Do you see any? Are you leaning with using that? Are you leaning towards anybody with that? Because he likes Senior Bowl guys. I think we had a Senior Bowl guy every year he's drafted, and small school guys like Josh Williams, Najee Johnson in the 7th round, like those type of HBCU guys, even those type of wild card guys. That's a better question. Who's a wild card guy for you?
There's a guy that flashed at the Senior Bowl who's also a smaller school guy out of Central Michigan, edge. His name is Thomas Income. He's 6'2", 622 pounds, has 33-plus inch arms, And he's still raw. He tested pretty well. Ran a 4.66, a 1.6 yard 10-yard split. Had a 30-inch vertical 9.10. Broad jump, and had 23 reps on the bench. He didn't do any of the cone or the short shuttle, but he flashed a couple times as a pass rusher. So he's somebody I think on day 3 the Chiefs might end up looking at. Again, this is just based off of flashes that I saw at the Senior Bowl. I have zero tape of Central Michigan defense, so we'll see how that goes. But use nice handwork, and specifically that get off that you see with that 1.65 yard split. Running backs, that's in the realm of some of the running backs that we see come out. So it's nice to see a guy like Income, who's got some tools already at his disposal, but he doesn't necessarily know how to use his body to his advantage. And he also has that 6'2", stocky 262-pound frame that you could shift inside and use as a pass rusher in that sense as well. So he's got quick hands. He showed a couple times with his swipe the ability to get to the outside of a tackle and attack the outside shoulder, which I enjoyed. So he's somebody I have my eye on from a smaller school standpoint, and I think Darnell Wright is the Senior Bowl guy that they might love. I love Darnell Wright. Like he's my offensive tackle 2 in this class, and I believe he can play left and right. So if you bring him into Kansas City, I think the comp that I ended up settling on, because I'm terrible at comps, so I only do it when I feel comfortable, is Juwan Taylor. Funny enough, these guys are athletic, they're big, they got strength to them, and I think that Darnell might even be stronger than Juwan Taylor at this point already in his career. He's a bit older, but he plays on the right-hand side, and you could ask him to play left, I think, but you're already asking one guy to play out of position with more experience. That makes a little more sense than asking Darnell Wright to do it right out of college, but I love what he offers. Big, physical dude. I personally believe he's the best second-level blocker in the NFL. He gets, or in the draft, he gets out into the second level and just blocks up dudes right away. He's really good at it. So I think he's the guy that I would have my eye on, especially at the end of the first round.
That's a great segue. Let's talk about some offensive linemen. You already touched on Darnell. Darnell is definitely one of the guys I'm looking at too, if we do address the offensive line a little more. Let's talk about, since we got Juwan Taylor, okay. All right, who are some other right tackle prospects you could look at now? Because like you mentioned, it seems like the Chiefs are moving Juwan to left tackle. So, I mean, I guess that removes guys like Paris Johnson. Let's see, I'm trying to think who else. Who else at left tackle? I don't know. But DeJuan Jones of Ohio State. Let's talk about him at right tackle. What do you think about DeJuan Jones?
So I'll say one thing. I'll say one thing before we get this. I don't think left tackle's off the board. I really
Thank you. I was going to say the same thing.
Just because they say they're going to put him there, that's probably – I could see that as a lot of gamesmanship for the draft. Saying if they got a guy that falls,
possibly.
We have a right tackle who we know can play right tackle really well, and we now have a left tackle. So I don't think that anything's off the board. They've really given themselves flexibility in the first round at tackle. But DeJuan Jones makes a lot of sense for a right tackle only prospect because he can't move very well. And that's what they wanted. I think that's why they wanted Orlando Brown in here. They're like, hey, you play right tackle, we'll get you that extension. We'll get it right now. We'll get it done. But you don't want to play right tackle. You want to play left tackle. So you go play it somewhere else. He can't move very well. And DeJuan Jones, it's funny watching this guy play because he does not have foot speed. He doesn't have that athletic ability, but his arms are literally so long that he can just reach guys and then let his slow feet catch up. So he like reaches guys and then you can see him like crab walk sometimes into a position to actually block them. It's ridiculous. And he's so strong with his hands and locking out his arms that sometimes that's all he needs. He doesn't necessarily need to be in a great position to block them, but they're really taught at Ohio State, especially for these guys who aren't as athletic, to ride them out of the pocket. Just get your arms on him, get on the inside shoulder and ride him out of the pocket. He does that well. My biggest problem again is that he's not athletic. His balance, he can get a little too top heavy for how big he is. Like I think I actually have my profile up for him right now. Slow feet, athletic ability, and balance are going to challenge what he can do in the NFL. That's like a right tackle for you. You don't have that athletic ability. So you're kind of trading what Orlando Brown was at left tackle for a guy who probably will do the same thing at right tackle. If you face him up with speed rushers, he might end up, it'll just be easier for Mahomes to see because he opens up to the right-hand side. So that's the only difference you're seeing really. But again, I talked about his top heaviness on his on his face a couple times when he shouldn't be, gets over his feet, and that's where the problem is in run blocking, is that you see in the NFL, if you're a tackle and you're coming out and your hands are here, your shoulders are over your feet, this is what's going to happen. You're just going to get smacked in the back and you're going to fall down. And these guys are really good at figuring that out. So you just got to figure that out. I mean, there was Trey Smith was like that too. He was really top heavy. You've seen that go down a little bit, but his aggression is why he's so top heavy. He was able to get out and really dominate people, and he was really wanting to do that. But Dwan doesn't really have that, first step, get out and do that. He's more of a, let me take this, I don't even know what you want to call it, this bean pole that's like gigantic, like, Jack the Beanstalk kind of thing, and just whack people with it and get into them. So he's got extremely long arms, and he uses them really well. That's about it I can say for a right tackle.
Dan, is there a Mitchell Schwartz anywhere in this draft? Because we've been trying to replace Mitch since he unfortunately had to retire. And is there any Mitchell Schwartzes in this draft?
Well, from a perspective of technique, I believe Peter Skronsky has the best chance to be that kind of technician. I believe he can play left tackle, and a lot of people want him to play inside, but the technique that he provides with the athleticism, because we know Mitch wasn't the best athlete, but he looked athletic because he was so good at making defensive ends play to him.
He was so
good. I think Peter does the same thing, but he's also athletic enough to overcome some of your shortcomings as a guy who's got shorter arms. And when you have that, sometimes your technique has to be absolutely perfect. And that's kind of the problem. Mitch was kind of unique in that sense. I don't remember his arm length off the top of my head, but I think he had shorter arms than like 34, 33. But technique didn't matter because he was so perfect with it. He can have guys play to him. Skronsky has that short area quickness and the technique to be able to play left tackle, guard. I think he can even play center. I think he legitimately can play all 5 positions. I think he is that good. So from that perspective, I think teams might get enamored with Darnell Wright, Anton Harrison, Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, and you might see Skronsky fall down, especially if a lot of teams haven't pegged as a guard, which does tend to happen. But he's following in the footsteps of his teammate Rashawn Slater, who was still a top 10 selection, if I'm not mistaken, and he worked out just fine with the Chargers. He's a great tackle, and he's going to be a great left tackle for a long time. And I think Peter Skronsky fits a lot of the same mold. He's not as good of a power player and a technician as Rashawn Slater was, but he's good enough that he can get it done in that sense.
Okay, so here's the second question. We got any more draft questions? Kylie, you got any more guys?
I have one.
Go ahead, Boogie, because mine's like overall draft question. No, you go first because yours is related to the tackle position.
Well, this is not a tackle position, but Dan, I have to ask you. I've been one of the ones that think we still could improve at corner. What do you think about Joey Porter?
Oh, Joey Porter reminds me a lot of Charvarius Ward. And he's not, I don't specifically think he's a fit in Kansas City, but I think they made Charvarius Ward work personally. And when you're looking at the corners that they have, let me find my notes on them because I have them written up here somewhere. I have too many notes. Sorry, guys. This can take a second.
You probably got a Bible over there. Notes.
Right.
This is great.
I was about to say. Bible.
All right. Corner group. Here we go. So I guess what I should say before I get into anything is he does fit with what the Chiefs like at like a Josh Williams mold. Okay. Those are him and Jalen Watson. Typically they're a bit longer, a little bit more physical. They don't necessarily have Trent McDuffie's short area quickness. Okay. I think Jalen Watson's a much better athlete and might end up being a better corner overall because of it. But Josh Williams played really well too. Joey Porter is, it's really difficult for me to get with him because he's a physical press man corner. And I don't think he's very good playing off. I don't think he's very good playing in space. His hips are tight. His feet are bad. And the lack of twitch is what does it for me, is why you see, I think he would be a great fit in a place like the Jets or San Francisco, where they have some of these guys. They can play more cover 3. They don't have to be in press man all the time, but they also don't have to follow guys across the field. That's why Charvarius Ward is there now. They said, okay, you don't need to follow anybody. You don't play man at all. You can just be over here on your side. You go vertical, and that's it. That's all you got to do. Wash your hands of it. So I think that if he has to change directions, if he has to come downhill, some of his late on breaks for receivers, he's not good at anticipating the route breaks for a lot of guys. That gets you beat on slants. It gets you beat on just about everything underneath and across your face. But he's a very physical guy. That's one thing you do. If he does play off a little bit, you get him 5-10 yards separation. He has that click and close ability where you don't have to change your hips. You just dig your feet in and get downhill, and he will come downhill. He will hit people. He uses the sideline very well in man coverage. He really likes to use his hands and get leverage on a receiver and run him on the outside. So that's why you like to see him as that man corner or a boundary cover 3 corner where he can just ride guys to the outside depending on his responsibility. So in terms of what the Chiefs like to do, it makes sense from a cover 2, cover 4 type of defense that they've been running. But the physicality stuff for the Chiefs has been more prevalent, I think, with Josh Williams. I think that they're just better change of direction guys. Even Williams, to an extent, he's a better athlete than I think Joey Porter is, trying to use his hips. So pretty good rerouting guy, and I think that the Chiefs probably won't be taking a corner in the first round because their needs are elsewhere. And I still think Joey Porter is going in the first round somewhere. So I like what he can offer in a scheme-specific sense. I just don't see him as one of the top lockdown guys in this draft.
Yeah, he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler anyway. But that's here and there.
You're probably not wrong.
But I know some people was arguing for Christian Gonzalez of Oregon as being better, as being the top corner in this draft class. But I know John Edwards was talking about Cam Smith. Cam Smith, he's another guy that visited the Chiefs not so long ago at corner. What do you – I don't know if it's Cam Smith or Sam Smith, but what do you think about his game?
I have one game on Cam Smith. It's really unfortunate because it was against Tennessee, so I learned almost nothing. They basically put him on Jalen Hyatt and said, "Okay, we're going to send him." I'm trying not to get off topic here, but Cam Smith was basically just asked to cover Jalen Hyatt in the slot. He's a versatile corner that can play on the outside, can play in the slot. But they said, you're fast. You're not going to get beat behind you. Go cover Jalen Hyatt. He didn't beat him all game. Jalen Hyatt had one of his quieter games because they understood what you're supposed to do. Just put a guy over top of him and make him beat you underneath, and he couldn't do it. So I noticed that he's a smooth mover. He can play man, he can play zone. You saw him take a couple of zone reps and a couple of man reps. So he had that ability to him. He has that click and close ability as well. They blitzed him a couple times, so that was cool. I like to see them blitz him. Again, covering Jalen Hyatt gets a plus for me if you can just stay on top of this guy. So we know he trusts his speed. He has that speed, but he is absolutely disinterested in playing the run. He is not about that life. He's not coming down to get in a skirmish. He doesn't want to get hit. He kind of just wants to let it happen, and that's fine. But I think the Chiefs would prefer corners that play the run, as we've seen with Joshua Williams, even Trent McDuffie, L'Jarius Sneed, Jalen Watson, all these guys. You're going back to Charvarius Ward. All of them play the run. So that seems to be something schematically and defensive culture-wise that they really value.
Yeah, I heard he's kind of grabby. In man coverage. But
there's a lot of that. I don't mind grabbiness.
Right, but it is what it is. Let's say the Chiefs do go ahead and draft this guy, right? Okay, so do you see a scenario where, let's say, L'Jarius Sneed can get traded at some point in this draft? Are you cool with that at first, or are you like, okay, we can do better than this, and just try to keep Sneed?
I like Sneed. I love Sneed. I love him. I personally wouldn't trade him, but I understand. Okay. It feels like the Chiefs have identified the corners that fit. If you can nail 3 or 4 corners in a draft all the way through from 1st, 4th, and 7th round, I think you've identified what you want to attack as a corner in your defense. And while I love L'Jarius Sneed, if they take a first round, even a second round corner, he's probably on the trading block. I don't think it makes any sense to draft somebody in the first or second round with the corners that you've already not only made work, but gotten production out of, to then add another one to the group who's not going to play. You're just not going to play because you already have a rotation. You have 4 corners that are going to be they're going to be rotating in and on the field. You take another one, that's a waste of a pick unless you're trading away your guy who's you maybe don't want to pay. Maybe you don't want to pay him because you think you can get production out of corners. And L'Jarius Sneed, as good as he is, we can get draft capital for this guy before he becomes an all-pro corner this year, which he very well might, and you have to pay for him. So from that perspective, from the team building perspective, I understand it. I wouldn't do it myself. I would lock him up now before he becomes an all-pro corner, get him a little cheaper, but team building, future draft picks, I understand.
Kylie, go ahead with your question, Kylie.
Okay, so I know it's really difficult to know what's going to happen in the draft. Obviously, we have the 31st pick. A lot can happen. There could be a run on wide receivers, this, that, whatever. If it were up to you and all things were equal, what position would you take first?
For me, I'm taking a defensive end. And honestly, I'm trading up myself. I think that this is what you need to do in this draft class, because we've talked a little bit about wide receiver already. Actually, not a lot about wide receiver. Offensive tackle is still in play, but there is nobody at defensive end outside next to George Karlaftis that you think is going to be a legitimate upside player. I like Mike Dana. He's a very good rotational guy. I know a lot of people think Charles Omenihu was going to come in and be a solidified starter. He's not. He is best as a pass rush specialist, a guy you can spot start, much like we saw Carlos Dunlap doing last year. He can spot you starts, but he's much better off the bench in a rotational aspect, not a starter. He's not very good run defender. He's really good at being a pass rusher from anywhere from 9 all the way from wide 9 to 0 tech. He can do all of that. It's really good for their defense. So you need a guy who's going to grow with George Karlaftis that you can bookend right now, get that 50-year option with this defensive end, whoever it's going to be, go up and get him and make it happen to solidify your defensive line for the future, especially if you're going to extend Chris Jones. You want to have 2 guys that can push quarterbacks to Chris Jones. You need to be able to do that, because if you have George Karlaftis who's getting better and he can collapse the pocket, we know Chris is going to come up the middle, and then you have this other end over here who's just like messing around. You don't really have someone there. Go lock it down so you can do what C. Spagnuolo wants to do, is collapse the pocket and bring everyone to Chris Jones. That's what they got to do.
All right.
That's where I'm at with it too. I'm a edge in the first round type of dude right now. So
then it's a consensus that Brett Veach really did his job last year. He nailed the draft, like literally every round. Not really too many question marks outside of Damian Kennard. Who was your favorite draft pick from last year?
My favorite when it happened, like when the draft happened, it was Leo Chanel. Like, I thought that was just awesome. I loved what he can do. We're going to see how he's going to be involved in the defense going forward. If you end up drafting him and he's a Sam linebacker and that's all he plays, that's a waste of a pick now. It's a waste. He's a 3rd round pick. He's not playing very much. So unless he's going to be playing as a coverage linebacker a little bit more, if he's going to be pass rushing a little bit more, I personally think it's a waste of a pick to draft a linebacker to have him play maybe 25% of the snaps for the future. That's a waste of a 3rd round pick or whenever he was picked. So right now, I think it's going to end up, my favorite pick is probably going to end up being Brian Cook, because now, Juan Thornhill's gone. Brian Cook at the end of the season was playing more as a single high safety, in the box safety, lining up in the slot. They used him all over the field a lot more, and they gained a lot of trust. And obviously, they were comfortable. Obviously, they brought in Mike Edwards, but that's neither here nor there. They're comfortable with him enough that they let Juan Thornhill get underpaid a little bit by the Cleveland Browns in terms of what I thought he was going to get. I think that was still a good, solid deal for Juan Thornhill. But that the Chiefs could have paid that. Like they could have paid Juan that. They felt pretty comfortable. And with how the Chiefs want to play defense, they want to funnel pretty much everything into their safeties, whether that's behind the linebackers and they want to play from the corner in. So they want to if they don't want guys on an island. If you run up the field as a wide receiver, fine, we'll play a receiver out there. But we want to funnel everything into the safety so they can come down and make plays so that guys don't get loose. That's a lot of significance put on Brian Cook, and that tells me that they feel pretty comfortable with the player he's going to be, that he can also play a little bit of single high. Not all the time. He's not going to play a ton of single high because that's really not his strength. It's coming in the boxes, playing a little bit in the slot, and being a physical enforcer for your defense. And I think he might end up being one of the more outspoken defensive members, take over a little more of a leadership role. So this year is going to tell a lot about Brian Cook, and I think he's at the end of the year, he might be my favorite pick unless Sky Moore just balls out.
Don't mention that name. You got Sky Moore fan club number 1 and number 2 over here.
I love him too, man. I do.
I'm gonna give Kylie the nod at 1, Boogie. I'm sorry.
I'll take that. I'll let her be the leader of that. I'm right here, Pat.
Sky Moore. Sky Moore.
Do
you see a shot come?
You in the back seat, Chuck. I'm in the passenger seat. You in the back seat. You with us?
Do you see a shot, Dan? Do you see somebody? Because last year the shock was actually getting Trent McDuffie because he wasn't supposed to be there at all. That was the shocker of the draft. The year before that, it was a Trey Smith being there in the 6th. Is there a shocker that you see later on or in the middle or a move that you don't expect?
I mean, if I saw it, I guess I really wouldn't expect it, right? So,
well, yeah.
I don't know, man. This is more of a trying to figure out Brett Veach, and I've got a pretty good track record of figuring out some of the day 3 picks. But I had Josh Williams last year, I had Cornell Powell, and what's his face? I cut Joshua Kando the year before. We'll see how if I can figure it out for this year, but I figure that out a little bit more into April. I'm not there yet. So right now, I still think they're going to trade up in the first round. That's my own thing. If they don't, I won't necessarily be surprised. And I also don't see them trading down out of the first round while the draft is in Kansas City. So just right now, I'm still trying to figure out what Brett Veach might be trying to do. So I don't have a great answer for you, unfortunately.
Okay. We'll check back in with you after the draft. So I think we all agree we're getting Felix at 31, right? That's what we all agree on.
I'd be comfortable.
I want you to be excited. Okay, who makes you excited?
Why not?
Miles Murphy.
Miles
if he's
Murphy.
at 31, I'd run around my house.
But you said you trade up, right?
Yeah, it's like I'm going to get somebody. Personally, I'm going to get somebody.
I want the kid from Florida State, actually, but he stayed in school.
Yeah. With Jared Verse, man, I want Jared Verse too, but he's like, I'm going to go try and get myself a national championship. Okay, I get it.
I'm a Florida State fan. I ain't mad at it.
That's what I'm about to say. You're a Florida State guy. That's why you said that.
I love my boy. I'm still waiting for Kane, though, to come through for me. He got to come through for me one day. I don't know when it's going to happen. He's a new Tony Passanio right now. So, like I said, Dan has been a supporter and a great guy, and you put in the work, man. You definitely put in the work with the film and with the Twitch, and you and Ryan over there. Ryan, call me. No, you guys definitely put in the work, and you are definitely my source for draft news. You guys are really in. Shout out to KC Sports Network too. Those guys over there too. But I see the passion, man. I see the fire that you have for this. Hey, man, we appreciate you, man, for coming through and always showing love. And we're gonna have to go back through this draft. I'm willing to have. Are you coming to the draft?
I'm trying to get my credentials. I'm trying actually. So we'll see if I get credentials.
You going to the draft?
I'm trying to go to the draft. Yeah. So we'll see if those get put in. But I think no matter what, we're going to be at the draft doing something with myself and Ryan at a live stream event. So we're definitely going to have something.
I'm coming on. I'm spoiling that. I'm jumping on the set. I'm jumping on the set. No, hey, if you get credentials, I'll carry your bags.
All right, I'll hold you to that.
So,
there goes my camera.
Hey, man, we love you, man. We love your work and we love your passion. So, we appreciate having you on the show, Dan. Did Dan just leave?
No, I didn't leave. My camera died.
Uh-oh. Well, we got to wrap up the show.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for coming on.
I was waiting for your daughter to pop up, dude.
You know, she's out. She's just passed out. Thank y'all for having me so much. Honestly, you guys are great. I love what you do. And always, you guys ask me to be on, I'll be there.
For sure, man. We appreciate you, Dan.
Much appreciated, man.
Daniel Harns, ladies and gentlemen. Go follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Twitch, RGR. Ryan going rogue.
Locked on Chiefs.
Love those guys, man. Love those guys for real. So let's get to the sponsors, Chuck.
Yeah, let's get to the sponsor. Wrap this up. All right, so for today at homage.com, they 20% off everything on their website. So that's the special they got going on right there. And opening day just happened today. Opening day just started today. So you still got your MLB Retro Helmets collection going on. The Royals, they couldn't score a run today.
They already in mid-season groove. They already ready. They
already, man. And as Women's History Month comes to a close, you still got that collection going on. And the NBA playoffs is right around the corner. We're a few weeks away from that. So NBA on Fire collection, that's still going on. So copy some gear and pay homage.
Pay homage.
And Boogie's phone died, so yeah. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, everybody's phone died.
Right.
So next week we got some more draft coverage. We're gonna try to touch on some more positions and more guys and all that stuff. So stay in tune with us, man. Kingdom Cast, man. We appreciate the love and the support, and get them likes up, get them shares up. Please sub. We need like 5 subs to get the 500. We're trying to get to 1,000, but
500, man.
we're trying to get the 500. Help us out, man. Show us that love that y'all show us all the time, man. We appreciate y'all, man.
We're gonna have a big ass giveaway. We're gonna have a big ass giveaway for both. We get the 500 subscribers. We're gonna have a big ass giveaway for that, and we're still working on the giveaway for the over 2,000 followers that we got. We're still working on that, y'all. It's coming.
Facts.
It's coming. Just be patient. It's coming.
Please be patient and show us the love. Show us the love. Kylie, take us out.
All right. Well, you saw it here. Daniel Harms, thank you again for him coming on, talking draft with us. I don't know how he keeps all of that knowledge straight. That was very impressive. We'll be back here on Thursday. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And then we'll be back next Thursday. More draft talk. We're getting close. I think it's like 28 days or something. I don't know. We're getting close. Anyway, thanks for coming by. Don't forget to like, and we'll see y'all later.
Oh, before we go.
Oh.
I'm sorry. It's important. It's important. It's important. To the families of that school shooting, to those kids, to those parents, to those school workers, to those teachers, principals, administration, to all of those people, we love you. Hug your kids, man. It's a crazy world we living in. Hug your people, man. You never know, like, for real. Love on your people every day, because you never know. We are living in a very, very odd and weird world. And from the bottom of my heart, and I think I speak for everybody that's a part of this team, we love and prayers and thoughts and encouragement and all of that goes out to each and every one of those kids, man. That's a horrendous situation. And it's like becoming normal, and that's not cool at all. It's like the last thing that should be regular. You know what I'm saying? So let's turn that around. Let's start loving each other regularly. Like, make that normal to say, Chuck, I love you. Kylie, I love you. Such and such, I love you. I want to help you. Like, let's start making that the norm instead of violence and trolling and silly stuff and embarrassing people. Like, let's stop that, man. Let's change this, bro. It's way too much. And I hate to get like extra serious on you. I'm sorry, but like, it's emotional. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's such a crazy situation, especially for guys like me that have kids, guys like Dan that has kids, Boogie has kids. Happy birthday to Boogie's son too, by the way. Happy birthday, Amani. I think is it Monty or Monty? Manny. I don't know. Happy birthday to Boogie's son. But
Yeah, happy
to all
birthday.
those families, man, go hug somebody in your family randomly. Go hug somebody in your house. Tell them you love them before you go to bed. We love y'all, man. Kingdom Cash. We out.
We out here.